The story begins with a view of a city engulfed in fierce flames, where chaos reigns and unknown assassins slaughter indiscriminately. Amidst this carnage, a brutal battle unfolds between one assassin and our boy, Theo Ragnar. Theo is a member of the powerful Ragnar Archducal family, a clan ruling the northern region of the empire and famously known as the Great Wall of the North. For thousands of years, this family has stood as the empire's shield, defending its borders from all invaders. Legends claim the Ragnars possess the blood of dragons, granting them abilities that far exceed ordinary humans, the power to wield magic, master the sword, and unleash immense physical strength. Unfortunately for Theo, he was born without any of these gifts. Despite his noble lineage, he lacks the strength, magic, and talent that define his family. Now, as fate would have it, he finds himself mocked and mercilessly beaten by the very man who once trained him, his sword instructor, now revealed as an assassin. What a snake! Theo cannot comprehend why his life has turned out this way. Powerless, betrayed, and bleeding on the battlefield, he wonders why the world is so cruel. The instructor, grinning wickedly, decides to make Theo's final moments even more unbearable. He commands his subordinates to bring in the lifeless body of Theo's mother and throw it at his feet. Then, with a voice filled with scorn, he tells Theo that all of this happened because Theo lacked the power to protect what was his. In the Ragnar family, there is only one creed. The strong are kings. And in this moment, Theo Ragnar is the weakest of them all. Desperate and enraged, Theo grabs his sword and attempts one final strike. But before he can even close the distance, another assassin hurls a blade from afar. It pierces Theo's body, leaving him barely alive. As his vision fades, Theo catches sight of a mysterious figure standing amid the flames, a person clad in a white robe. With his final breath, Theo whispers, "Is this the end of my life? If I had power, would things have been different?" He exhales his last breath. Then, a faint chime echoes through the burning city. A blue window appears before his dimming eyes, displaying a message. Theo Ragnar has died. Special skill activated, regression. Suddenly, light swallows his vision. Theo's red eyes snap open. He's back in the training hall, holding a wooden sword, and standing before him is the traitorous instructor, Rendon, alive and unscathed. Shock floods Theo's mind. Am I dreaming? He wonders. I clearly remember dying. Before he can make sense of it, another blue window appears in front of him. First mission, punch Rendon right in the face. Theo freezes for a second, then clenches his fist. If this is a dream, he'll gladly take advantage of it. His fist shoots out and smashes into Rendon's face, silencing the entire training hall. The punch lands, but Rendon barely reacts. Damn! Instead, he scowls and retaliates, striking Theo with his wooden sword and knocking him back several meters. Stop fooling around! Rendon snaps, warning Theo to behave himself. He reminds him that the awakening ceremony, the Ragnar family's sacred ritual to reveal one's special powers, is approaching soon. Theo, panting, blinks in disbelief. The awakening ceremony, that was 10 years ago. Which means, he's gone back in time. While he's still trying to process everything, the blue window flashes again. Mission complete. Reward, Ragnar bloodline power activated. Theo accepts the reward instinctively. A radiant light bursts from his chest, and energy floods his body. For the first time in his life, he feels strength coursing through his veins. His stats begin to rise at an unnatural rate. The next day, at Rose Palace, Rendon visits Theo's mother, Cecilia, pretending to be a loyal instructor. He tells her that although Theo lacks talent, he'll continue to train him diligently. Trusting him completely, Cecilia pays Rendon handsomely, her heart filled with confidence in her son's future. But as soon as Rendon leaves, his true nature is revealed. He mocks their naivety, smirking to himself about how easily he's fooled them, and secretly reports to an unknown employer. Meanwhile, Theo finds his mother and runs to embrace her tightly, tears filling his eyes. The memory of her death still haunts him, even though she stands alive before him now. Silently, he swears to change fate, no matter the cost. He will use the mysterious blue window's power to strengthen himself, defeat his enemies, and destroy Rendon. Suddenly, another message appears before his eyes. Second mission, train your body to a certain level. Determined and vengeful, Theo throws himself into training immediately. He recalls that in his past life, he had only served in the Ragnar intelligence unit due to his lack of combat ability. This time, things will be different. He decides to use his knowledge of a rare strength-enhancing medicine known as the Bloody Sword Emperor Elixir. In the past, his weak body couldn't handle it. But now, with his newfound Ragnar's power, he's ready. Theo trains relentlessly, his progress displayed in the blue window. The elixir keeps fatigue at bay, and his determination fuels every movement. His dedication catches the eye of Evelyn, the manager of the training facility. Watching from a distance, she finds herself intrigued. This is the boy they called useless? She thinks. Theo's body trembles as he nears his limit, his muscles scream for rest, but he refuses to stop. He remembers that resting causes his progress to drop. Not again, he mutters through gritted teeth. Not this time. When the counter finally hits 100%, the blue window flashes once more. The reward is vague, but Theo accepts without hesitation. A dazzling light bursts from his body, bright enough to illuminate the entire hall. Evelyn, watching nearby, is left stunned. The next morning, Theo wakes up to Evelyn checking on him. She informs him that he collapsed during training but then questions him seriously about what she witnessed, a mana signal. Opening a mana hall before the awakening ceremony is strictly forbidden, she explains, and what she saw was unmistakable. Theo freezes. He knows that opening a mana hall would kill a normal human. But then it hits him, the reward he received wasn't just power. It was the dragon heart, a legendary organ capable of housing a mana hall safely. Along with it came 10 years' worth of accumulated magical power from his past life. The dragon heart is one of the most coveted treasures in existence, desired by warriors and nobles alike. Only it can safely contain vast amounts of mana without destroying the body. But if Evelyn were to discover this secret, Theo would be executed for breaking the family's laws. Thinking quickly, Theo deflects suspicion. He challenges her accusation, reminding her that accusing a member of the Ragnar family without clear evidence carries the death penalty. Bound by her devotion to the law, Evelyn agrees to inspect his body. She checks his abdomen, where a mana hall would normally reside, and finds nothing. Shocked by her mistake, Evelyn kneels immediately, ready to accept death for her false accusation. Theo, however, spares her. He realizes that someone as capable as Evelyn could be a valuable ally in the future. Keeping his secret, he calmly tells her to rise. Days later, Rendon resumes his role as instructor but continues to sabotage Theo's training, intentionally teaching him flawed techniques. Theo, now far more perceptive, sees through the bastard's deceit. He becomes certain Rendon is a spy working for an outside force. To expose him, Theo provokes Rendon into agreeing to a duel. If Rendon loses, he'll be forced to contact his handler, and that's when Theo will find his true enemy. Meanwhile, at Camellia Palace, Axion Ragnar, one of the 4 Hounds of the North, receives word of Theo's upcoming duel. Confident that Rendon will cripple Theo, he laughs dismissively. However, his uncle, Ed Troyvan, one of the 9 dragons, advises caution, reminding Axion that Theo is still a Ragnar by blood. But Axion merely smirks, calling this duel the perfect chance to erase Theo once and for all. A week later, the tournament grounds are packed with spectators. The crowd jeers and mocks Theo as he steps into the arena. Another mission notification flashes before his eyes. 3rd mission, defeat Rendon. Finally! The moment we've all been waiting for. Before the duel begins, flashbacks show Evelyn's conversation with Theo earlier that week. She had been the one to suggest the duel, insisting that only through battle could he clear his name. In the Ragnar family, she reminded him. The strong are king. She suspected Rendon's treachery and urged Theo to prove his worth through victory. Now, back in the present, Rendon stands before Theo, exuding arrogance. I'll give you the first move, he says mockingly. Our boy Theo grips his sword and rushes forward, his improved swordsmanship stunning the onlookers. Rendon blocks his first strike, but the impact forces him back several steps. For the first time, fear flickers in Rendon's eyes. Theo's strength feels different. As their blades clash again, Theo presses the attack, demanding to know who ordered Rendon to betray him. Rendon retreats, denying everything, but his hesitation gives him away. Theo smirks, realizing his suspicion was right. With a powerful swing, Theo cuts off Rendon's hand. The man screams in agony, collapsing to the ground. Theo doesn't hesitate. His eyes burn with the hatred of 2 lifetimes as he raises his sword high and beheads the traitor in one clean motion. The blue window appears once more. 3rd mission complete. Theo feels a rush of power as a new skill unlocks, observation. Testing it briefly, he senses a new potential awakening within him. But before he can continue, an explosion shakes the arena. Descending from above is Julius Ragnar, the demon dragon himself and commander of the White Armor Dragon Cavalry. He lands with immense force, surveying the aftermath. Impressive, Julius says with a grin. Join my legion. The crowd gasps in disbelief. Julius personally inviting someone is almost unheard of. But Theo, to everyone's shock, declines. Even Remington Narcio, another of the 4 Hounds of the North, stares in silence, unable to believe what he's hearing. The news spreads quickly to Camellia Palace. Emil Ragnar, Axion's mother and the mastermind behind Theo's past downfall, grows restless. Her brother, Ed Trovan, advises patience, while Axion dismisses Theo's progress and begins scheming another plan to bring him down. Back at Rose Palace, Theo thanks Evelyn for her support. She asks why he refused Julius's offer. Theo admits he had wanted to accept but decided against it. Joining now would limit his potential. I need to grow stronger on my own, he says. Curious, he secretly activates his observation skill on Evelyn and learns she still longs for her days in the white armor dragon cavalry. Later that day, a young man named Sibildry approaches Theo, brimming with admiration. He requests a sparring match. Another blue window appears. Mission 4, eliminate the bad reputation of being the useless member of the Ragnar family. Theo glances around to see several others waiting for their turn to challenge him. Realizing he'll need allies in the future, he accepts the duel. Sybil attacks first, his strikes sharp and fast, but Theo blocks effortlessly and counters, knocking him to the ground. Sybil admits defeat with respect, calling Theo a true Ragnar. Curious, Theo uses his observation skill on himself, discovering detailed stats, talents, and several locked abilities. But one thing catches his attention: his luck stat is a negative number. Over the next few hours, Theo continues fighting one challenger after another. After each victory, he notices his luck increasing by 1 point, but Mission 4's progress barely moves, only 1%. He realizes that defeating weak opponents won't be enough. As he contemplates his next move, a shadow falls over the training ground. Stepping forward is Remington Narcio, the Silver Lion, one of the 4 hounds of the North, and one of the most talented young warriors among the noble families. Theo activates observation, reading Remington's status. Remington views him as a worthy rival, a surprise in itself. The two exchange a nod, then charge at each other with full strength. Their swords clash, sending a shockwave through the arena. In that instant, Theo's blue window flickers again. Mission 4 progress rises by another 1%. When Theo and Remington's swords clashed, the air crackled with tension. Steel rang against steel, sweat dripped, and neither of them seemed willing to back down. They'd been at it for a while, 2 warriors locked in a test of strength, skill, and sheer stubbornness, until, with one sharp strike, fate decided to troll Theo. Crack! Theo's sword snapped clean in half. Remington blinked, stunned for a moment, then looked at the broken blade and sighed. Victory was his, at least technically. But instead of gloating like any other warrior would, Remington sheathed his sword and said something that made everyone's jaw drop. I'll call this when you win. Theo froze mid-exhale. Huh! Remington explained that Theo's sword had already been half-dead before the fight, hanging on by sheer willpower, and that Theo himself looked like he'd been through 3 all-nighters and 2 bad breakfasts from his previous bouts. But Theo just shook his head and smiled faintly. A loss is a loss, he said. In a real fight, no one stops to check weapon durability. And with that, the 2 warriors clasped hands, mutual respect forged through the clang of blades and bruised pride. Remington smirked. Next time, we'll fight properly, no excuses. At that exact moment, the familiar blue panel in Theo's vision blinked to life. Mission 4 progress, 35%. Theo couldn't help but grin. He really is as strong as the rumors say. That duel had humbled him. His current strength was still far from where he needed it to be. But the fight hadn't been for nothing. His luck stat had increased by 10, and Mission 4's progress had jumped. Useful gains, even if his ego had taken a mild beating. Still, he couldn't stop thinking of ways to push the mission even further. And then, out of nowhere, Remington handed him a sealed envelope. Theo Ragnar, Remington said. I want you to join the Scaled Dragon Society. The crowd gasped. Theo blinked twice, thinking he'd misheard. Wait. Me? The ordinary guy? Joining that group? Remington chuckled. You're more than qualified. And between us, it's not that famous. Theo squinted. Yeah, sure, tell that to the entire kingdom that knows their name. He didn't know Remington's true reason for extending the offer, but he did know one thing. The Scaled Dragon Society revolved around one man, Axion Ragnar, and its members weren't exactly Theo's fan club. Most of them sneered at him whenever his name came up. Still, it was too good an opportunity to pass up. A perfect chance to spy on Axion and dig into whatever shady business went on at Camellia Palace. So Theo accepted. Nearby, Evelyn's brow furrowed slightly, concern flickering across her face. Days later, at Rose Palace, Cecilia, Theo's mother, was practically glowing with joy. She had the servants bustling around, preparing Theo's outfit for the Scaled Dragon Society's upcoming event. The woman was radiant, her hands trembling slightly as she fixed her son's collar. Making you look presentable, she said softly, is the least I can do for my son. Theo felt a lump rise in his throat. His mother had been through hell and back. Seeing her smile again made him realize just how far they'd come, and how much further he still had to go. For that brief moment, both mother and son allowed themselves to feel peace. 2 weeks later, the day of the event arrived. Remington personally came to fetch him, looking sharp as always. Theo stepped out, dressed in noble attire that screamed, "Yes, I clean up well." Remington whistled. "Theo, you look like you could charm an emperor and rob him blind in the same night." "Well done." Theo smirked. "I'll take that as a compliment." Over the past few weeks, they'd sparred often. That constant training had made them closer, comrades who'd sweat and bled together. Theo had even gathered a small army of new supporters, making him busier than a tavern bard on payday. As their carriage rolled through the grand streets, Remington glanced over. "This your first noble event?" Theo nodded. "Yep. I'm more used to swinging a sword than sipping fancy wine." Remington laughed. "Then brace yourself. Oh, and one heads up. Axion's got, let's say, a personality. He was actually the one who suggested inviting you, so don't take his behavior too personally." Theo chuckled. "So he's the one behind this? Good. Saves me time finding him." Hours later, they arrived at Camellia Palace, the heart of the lion's den. Theo took in the sight. The marble floors gleamed like mirrors, and the walls looked expensive enough to buy a small kingdom. Yet all he could think was, this is where my enemies weave their webs. Remington led him through the corridors, chatting casually. But Theo's sharp eyes caught something, a faint blue glow leaking from a nearby room. "A new mission?" His instincts kicked in. He moved toward it. "Wait, Theo!" Remington shouted, sprinting after him. Boom! Something exploded, a bag of wheat flour, of all things, bursting like a firework. Remington looked as shocked as Theo. The blue panel flickered in Theo's vision. Remington is confused. Meaning, he wasn't in on it. Theo raised his eyes and saw them, a group of snickering nobles. Leading them was none other than Axion Ragnar. "That," Axion grinned, "is how we welcome new friends." Remington's jaw clenched in anger. Theo, however, simply brushed the flour off his shoulders and smiled. "Thanks. I love creative welcomes." That caught Axion off guard. For a second, the smug noble's grin faltered. Later that evening, the grand banquet began. All eyes turned as Theo Ragnar entered, the ordinary man who dared to stand among them. The whispers spread fast. Remington apologized quietly for the earlier prank, but Theo waved it off. The room buzzed with mockery and sneers. Theo could almost hear their thoughts. Who invited this guy? He just smirked. Let them talk. They'll understand soon enough. Then, another faint blue glow. Upstairs. A second mission, maybe? Before he could check, Axion approached, all fake smiles and noble swagger. "Theo, glad you could join us," he said smoothly. "Don't mind that earlier bit of fun." Theo leaned in slightly, smiling. "Oh, it's fine," he said. "But I'll remember that welcome." The words hit like a subtle punch. Axion's expression twitched, clearly not used to people talking back. The noble's chatter buzzed like mosquitoes. Some went so far as to mock Remington for befriending Theo. That jab hit Remington hard, though he tried to hide it. Theo exhaled. He'd planned to keep things civil tonight, but if they wanted a show, they'd get one. "Mind if I introduce myself my way?" Theo asked, voice calm. Before anyone could reply, he grabbed a wine bottle, strode toward the loudest heckler, and smash! Shattered it right across the man's face. The hall went dead silent. The noble screamed, clutching his bleeding head. Theo tilted his head. "You were saying?" When the man started to curse, Theo took that as an excuse to deliver a lesson in etiquette. That involved several painful adjustments to the man's jawline. Blue text flickered again. Mission for progress plus 20%. Remington stared in disbelief. Did he just do that for me?" Theo didn't answer. He was busy grabbing the man's hand, twisting it until a sharp crack echoed through the hall. "Anyone else want to test me?" 4 armored guards immediately drew their swords, pointing them at Theo. They belonged to the Hanavi family, a vassal of the Ragnar bloodline. Theo smiled coldly. "Ah, so you serve a Ragnar family branch? And yet you raise your blades against me, a Ragnar? Are you ready to face the consequences of insulting your master's bloodline?" The temperature in the room plummeted. Everyone knew the rule: insulting a Ragnar could get your entire family executed. And no one had heard Theo speak with such authority before. He gave a simple command. "Kill them." Before anyone could react, a blur of movement sliced through the air. It was Evelyn. Heads fell. Silence reigned. The audience gawked, their faces pale as parchment. Evelyn turned to Theo. "Since when did you know I was following you?" Theo smiled slightly but said nothing. He was just glad she'd shown up. Everything had gone exactly as planned. A few days earlier, Evelyn and Julius had met privately. She told Julius that Theo was the most gifted student she'd ever taught, even surpassing Axion. Julius, intrigued, asked her to keep an eye on Theo at the Scaled Dragon event, and protect him if necessary. Now, back in the present, Evelyn realized Theo had known she was there all along. That confidence, that timing, it wasn't coincidence. He knew. It wasn't just intuition, the Dragon King's heart inside him made sure of that. Theo issued another command. Evelyn, cut off the hands of every fool here who mocked me. Without hesitation, Evelyn obeyed. Swords flashed, screams followed, and several nobles soon learned why mocking a Ragnar was a terrible idea. Mission for progress, 90% 100%. Axion stood frozen, unable to interfere. The punishment was lawful. Each target had verbally insulted a Ragnar. Even he couldn't defend them. When the chaos ended, Theo met Axion's gaze. Thanks for the party, he said casually. I had a great time. Then he turned and walked out like a boss. Mission 4 complete. Reward, experience elixir. That night, taverns buzzed with tales of Theo Ragnar's explosive debut. Meanwhile, at Camellia Palace, Emil, Axion's mother, was furious. She slapped her son across the face. You humiliated us. Do you realize how this makes Camellia Palace look? Axion stayed silent, shame burning behind his eyes. Ed Troyven emerged from the shadow, calm as ever. Don't be too hard on him, he said softly. What happened might actually work in our favor. Emil frowned. Explain. Ed smirked. Rose Palace has always been difficult to control. But thanks to Theo's little outbursts, we now have a reason to punish him under family law. Once he's branded a criminal, Camellia Palace can legally take over. Emil hesitated, but the logic was sound. And then, there was the subtle undertone between her and Ed, one that went beyond a mere brother and sister relationship. Back at the tavern, Remington clinked his mug with Theo's. I can't believe you did that, he said. I didn't even have the guts to stand up for myself, but you did, for me. You're incredible. Theo blinked. Wait. Too late. Remington raised his glass high. From today onward, I'll follow Theo Ragnar wherever he leads. The tavern erupted in cheers. Theo sighed inwardly. Great, now they think I did it out of friendship. Evelyn's voice echoed in his mind through telepathy. Let them. This misunderstanding isn't bad, they'll follow you more sincerely. Theo smirked. Fair enough. He sipped his drink and glanced at his blue panel, watching stats rise. Strength. Intelligence. Luck. The whole deal. Soon, he'd level up, and when he did, he'd be unstoppable. But for now, there was one more move to make. He handed Remington a piece of paper. The power struggle between me and Axion is only heating up. I need your help with something big. Remington read it and nodded immediately. I'll handle it. Whatever you need, I'm with you. Just as he said that, bang! The tavern doors burst open. Soldiers in gold armor stormed in, the sword of law, enforcers of the Ragnar family. Theo Ragnar, their captain declared. You're under arrest for acts of violence against noble families. Theo glanced at the warrant, genuine. He didn't resist. As the cuffs locked around his wrists, he subtly gestured to Remington, the signal to proceed with their plan. News of Theo's arrest reached Rose Palace within hours. Cecilia's heart nearly stopped. My son, she whispered. The trial was set for the same day. Meanwhile, Theo sat in the carriage, calm as ever. He knew this was bigger than punishment, it was a test. They wanted to destroy his legitimacy as a Ragnar. Good. Let them try. He'd been waiting for this. The courtroom was packed, a theater of power. Present were Julius Ragnar, Ed Troyvan, Osa Ragnar, and Wolfgang Ragnar, the council head. Theo bowed respectfully. Wolfgang wasted no time. You've humiliated this family. You'll be punished accordingly. Theo raised an eyebrow. You're right. I was too merciful. I should have beheaded them instead of just cutting off their hands. The hall fell silent. Julius smirked behind his hand. Theo continued, voice calm but firm. They were vassals, sworn to the Ragnar family. They dared to insult a Ragnar, threaten me, their superior. Ignoring that would have been a true disgrace to our honor. Osa spoke next, her tone softer. You're brave, Theo, but remember, strength alone doesn't rule. The wise must also listen to others. Theo nodded. He respected her more than he let on. She wasn't just a swordswoman, she was wisdom wrapped in steel. Finally, Wolfgang decides. Theo Ragnar, you will be confined for 3 months. Theo looked up. But the awakening ceremony is in 2 months. Wolfgang roared. Silence! Osa intervened again, suggesting that Theo be allowed to attend next year's ceremony instead. Ed Troyven smiled slyly. A lenient punishment, he thought. Perfect for stripping his reputation. But Theo surprised everyone. I wish to appeal the judgment. The room erupted. Julius leaned forward. You know what that means, don't you? Theo grinned. Trial by combat. And with that, a new blue panel blinked into existence. Mission 5, begin. Meanwhile, far away, smoke rose from the Ceres Merchant Guild. Evelyn and Remington were burning it to the ground under Theo's orders. And so, the game between Theo Ragnar and Camellia Palace had officially begun. Returning to the Judgment Hall, the atmosphere was thick enough to choke on. Wolfgang leaned forward, glaring at Theo like a parent catching their kid setting fire to the family fortune. So, he said, voice heavy with disbelief, you really want to turn a matter that could be settled in 3 months into a trial by combat? You're either fearless or hopelessly arrogant. Do you truly believe you can take on the combined might of 5 rival families, alone? Theo didn't flinch. He met Wolfgang's eyes with calm defiance. Please don't worry about this matter. I'll take care of it myself. And that, right there, was the sentence that made Julius's soul briefly leave his body. The man was already doing mental math on how quickly Theo would get crushed. An all-out war was impossible. The power gap between the families was way too wide. The only solution was a duel, a representative fight. One champion from each side, winner takes all. But that also meant Theo would likely face Axion, and let's be honest, in everyone's eyes, that matchup was basically a funeral with extra steps. Julius just couldn't understand why Theo would willingly jump off this cliff with a grin. Still, Theo doubled down, announcing that he'd accept the conditions and appoint a representative within a week. Wolfgang, raising a brow, assumed Theo would try to push Julius or Evelyn to become his proxy. But let's be real, neither of them, because of their personality, would say yes. So that left only one man standing, which is Theo himself. On the other side, Ed Troyven was already smirking, planning to send his monster in human form, Axion. Just when the room was about to settle, a booming voice echoed from the corridor. The doors opened with a thud, and in walked a man who didn't just enter, he arrived. Towering, broad-shouldered, and radiating command like the world itself took orders from him, this was none other than Kyle Ragnar, the head of the Ragnar family. Instantly, everyone in the room dropped to one knee. The air felt heavier, sharper. And just as Theo's heart skipped a beat, a blue panel appeared before him, one of those mysterious system prompts. New mission, take over Camellia Palace and uncover its secrets. Theo recognized that name. The same palace where he'd once felt something off, like a hidden dungeon waiting for him to dig deeper. But right now wasn't the time. His father's sudden arrival overshadowed everything. Kyle's voice broke the silence. Theo. Stand. Theo obeyed immediately. Kyle glanced around, his tone calm but carrying the weight of command. I overheard everything as I passed by, he said. Seems like you've gotten yourself into quite the predicament. You plan to settle this with a representative duel? Yes, father. That's correct. Kyle studied him, then asked. And who do you plan to choose as your representative? Theo hesitated but quickly realized this was a test. His father wasn't asking out of curiosity. He wanted to see what kind of man his son had become. I have no representative, Theo said finally. I will fight on my own. Kyle's lips curved into something between amusement and approval. If you do that, you'll surely lose. Theo straightened his back. Winning or losing doesn't matter until I've tried. I'll put everything I have into it. That earned him a deep, booming laugh from Kyle. The kind of laugh that made the walls tremble. That's my son! You've got the Ragnar blood for sure. What no one else knew was that Theo had no intention of relying solely on this duel. The fight was just a distraction. His real plan? To expose Camellia Palace's treason and bring it all crashing down from within. He'd already sent his companions to handle that mission. If they succeeded, the duel wouldn't even matter. But fate wasn't done playing dice. Kyle suddenly declared, I'll give you an opportunity. As family head, I'll test you myself. One strike. If you can withstand it, you're innocent. All charges will be dropped. The room went dead silent. One move from Kyle Ragnar? That wasn't a test, that was a divine punishment in sword form. Before anyone could speak, Kyle turned toward the door. We'll do it now. That's when Ed Troyvan, sweating bullets, stood up. Wait, family head. This isn't, surely you don't mean. But Kyle's cold gaze silenced him instantly. One look from that man and Ed's voice died in his throat. Even Wolfgang flinched. And just like that, Theo's fate was sealed, not in the courtroom, but on the training ground. The scene shifted. The training ground buzzed with tension. Every major figure was present, watching. Ed Troyvan stood at the side, biting his lip, frustrated that his elaborate plans had just gone up in flames. Still, he comforted himself with one thought: there was no way Theo could withstand Kyle's attack. Theo, on the other hand, was unnervingly calm. He'd secretly consumed the reward potion from his last mission, one that boosted his level and physical stats. If there was ever a time to cash in that buff, this was it. Kyle stepped into the arena, grabbing a random sword from the rack. He didn't even use his own blade, because that would have been overkill. "Ready?" he asked. Theo nodded. "Completely." A red aura flared around Kyle, painting the ground in crimson light. Even breathing felt difficult. Theo could feel his ribs vibrating just from standing near the man. But Theo had come prepared. That potion had pushed his strength to a whole new level, and he poured every point into raw power. Then, it happened. Kyle Ragnar swung. The whole arena exploded. The shockwave kicked up clouds of dust, stone, and disbelief. For a few seconds, no one could even see what had happened. When the dust cleared, there was Theo, somehow still standing, his sword shattered, his armor smoking, but alive. Kyle's lips pulled into a proud smile. "Good. Very good." The crowd erupted. Even those who doubted him couldn't hide their awe. Theo had withstood a blow from Kyle Ragnar, the man known for splitting boulders with his sneeze. Theo had done the impossible. That day, he didn't just survive, he won. When Theo finally woke up days later, the first thing he saw was his mother's tear-streaked face hovering above him. "Where am I?" he muttered weakly. Cecilia, his mother, held his hand tight. Before she could answer, Julius entered with good news. "The family head has ordered that everyone from Camellia Palace be expelled. The palace is now yours, Theo." Victory. But outside, not everyone was celebrating. Emile, furious and humiliated, was thrown out of her luxurious quarters, while Ed Troyven whispered to his son Axion, "You must kill Theo Ragnar. No matter what it takes." A few days later, at Camellia Palace, Theo explored his new domain like a gamer who just unlocked a new map. He tried out his freshly acquired inventory skill, pulling items in and out like a magician showing off. Among them was the blue key, his gateway to something deeper. It led him to a door that opened into what looked like a mine shaft, the entrance to a dungeon. The kind that promised both riches and broken bones. Inside, the place reeked of iron and damp earth. Moments later, a hulking wolf monster appeared, teeth gleaming like daggers. The beast lunged. Theo raised his shield, the impact rattling his entire arm. "Okay, that bite's no joke," he muttered under his breath. He countered, striking fast. The wolf staggered but came back even harder. Theo thought about trying his father's sword technique, but instinct told him to ditch the shield instead. He needed speed, not defense. With one clean motion, Theo dashed forward and drove his blade into the wolf's flank. The creature howled in agony before collapsing. And so began Theo's grind session in the dungeon. 2 months later. Word spread across the north like wildfire. Theo Ragnar had withstood the family head strike. The training grounds were now crowded with spectators, challengers, and jealous nobles who thought respect was optional. Theo's subordinates quickly proved otherwise, disciplining the arrogant ones with swift brutality. Things almost got bloody until a chilling frost swept through the air. "Enough," said a voice. A woman stepped forward, her icy aura freezing the tension mid-brawl. Ray Ragnar, one of the 4 hounds of the north. Behind her came Hulkus, another hound built like a fortress with legs. Hulkus grinned. "I heard you're the Luster Tiger now, Theo Ragnar. Mind if I see if that's true?" Theo didn't respond immediately. He was fresh from dungeon training, battered but stronger than ever. After all, he just defeated the dungeon boss, a drake, no less. The memory flashed in his mind, the massive creature awakening, scales glinting, its roar shaking the cavern. Theo had stabbed its eye first, classic move, and fought through waves of pain and adrenaline. The drake's counterattacks nearly crushed him, but he found its weak point beneath the neck and ended it with one decisive strike. The rewards were worth it, the drake's fang and claws, and a new skill, lesser drake fear, an aura that made weaker enemies tremble. And now, back at the training ground, he was about to put it to the test. Theo arrived just as Ray and Hulkus were arguing, tension crackling between them. But before Hulkus could finish his insult, the air grew heavy, Theo's murderous aura spread like wildfire. Several bystanders fainted instantly. Hulkus grinned wider. "Now we're talking." He charged. His blade cut through the air, but Theo's counter was faster. One move, one hit, and Hulkus was sent flying backward, crashing into the wall. Silence. Then cheers. Theo had just one-tapped a hound. Even Theo's own sword broke under the impact, his mother's gift. His heart ached as he stared at the shattered blade. Ray Ragnar watched from a distance, quiet. She remembered the boy Theo once was, the kindness he'd shown her long ago. A small smile crossed her face before she turned and walked away. That evening, the celebration was grand. Theo had a new nickname, new respect, and a reputation that reached beyond the family walls. Cecilia joined the festivities, proud and radiant. After the feast, Theo showed her the broken sword. Instead of scolding him, Cecilia's expression twisted in fury, not at Theo, but at the blacksmith who made it. "That sword was supposed to be unbreakable," she hissed. "Made of black iron wood. I'll deal with this myself." Her plan? March straight to Vask Workshop, the most famous forge in the region. Theo was excited to meet the legendary weaponsmith, Kirsten, renowned throughout the Ragnar lands. But when they arrived, Theo's jaw dropped. Cecilia casually greeted the owner with, "Mother." Theo froze. "Wait. Mother?" Kirsten, the high elf, turned around, elegant and intimidating. Theo blinked. "Hold up. My mom's mom is an elf? That means—" "Yup." Theo Ragnar, half-elf, confirmed. And when Cecilia threw the broken sword on the counter with a glare that could melt steel, Kirsten picked it up, frowned, and for the first time in a century, looked genuinely shocked. The blade, the supposedly indestructible one, was broken. Cecilia stood silently beside Theo when the question came, simple, sharp, and direct. "Who used this sword?" Kirsten asked, her tone calm but her eyes cold and discerning. Without hesitation, Cecilia answered. "Theo did." That was Theo's cue. Straightening his posture, he seized the chance to introduce himself properly. "My name is Theo," he said, offering a polite bow. Kirsten studied him for a long moment, her gaze scanning him as though she could see straight through the skin and into his soul. "Are you truly the one who wielded this sword?" she asked again, slower this time, testing him. "Yes," Theo replied, unwavering. "That is correct." For a brief moment, silence hung between them. Then, with a small motion of her hand, Kirsten said simply, "Follow me." As they walked through the wide corridors of the workshop, Theo's curiosity finally broke free. "Is it true?" he asked, glancing at Cecilia. "That Kirsten is your mother?" Cecilia nodded softly. "Yes, that's right. When I was young, she adopted me, though only for about a year." Theo blinked, slightly disappointed. For a second, he'd hoped that maybe, just maybe, he had some elven blood running through his veins. Cecilia smiled faintly at his reaction, then continued. "My mother, she loves beautiful things, jewelry, art, even people. That's probably why she adopted me." Theo chuckled under his breath. "Sounds charming." But his next question wasn't as light. "Then why did you leave her? Why not stay?" Before Cecilia could answer, Kirsten, who had been walking ahead, spoke without turning around. "She didn't leave. She ran away." Her tone was cutting. "Claimed she wanted to marry the head of the Ragnar family." Kirsten's lips curled into something between a sneer and a sigh. "Only an idiot would run off to join that cruel house. It's a miracle you're still alive, Cecilia." Cecilia lowered her eyes but didn't deny it. "I know, but I loved him. Back then, I really did." Theo, walking just behind them, caught that tone, a soft crack in Cecilia's voice that carried years of regret. For the first time, he realized just how little he'd understood about his mother and his previous life. When they reached Kirsten's room, she suddenly grabbed Theo by the wrist and pulled him in, shutting the door tightly behind them. The air was thick with a faint metallic scent, old tools, burning mana residue, and something faintly floral that reminded Theo of ancient elven incense. Kirsten turned to him with sharp eyes. "Do you have the primal dragon's sacred object?" Theo froze, utterly confused. "You mean, the relic our ancestors supposedly left to protect the Ragnar family? That's just a myth." Kirsten's expression darkened instantly. "A myth?" she scoffed. "Then explain this. How could your sword be destroyed like that if you didn't use the sacred object? Nothing else could have shattered it." Theo blinked, speechless. "The sword broke because I fought a damn drake," he thought, but decided not to argue. Kirsten clearly had her own ideas. Instead, she gestured toward a large box at the far end of the room. "Come here," she said. As Theo stepped closer, he noticed a soft blue glow seeping through the seams of the box. It shimmered like the mission panels he'd seen before. "You recognize it," Kirsten said quietly. "This box contains something of immense value. I've tried everything to open it, magic, mana, even blood rites, but nothing works." Her gaze locked on Theo's. "Inside this box lies the primal dragon's sacred object." She paused, letting that name sink in before continuing. "Long ago, there was a tale that the primal dragon broke one of its fangs to forge a weapon. That weapon was called Moon White, also known as the Demon's Sword." Theo's pulse quickened. Moon White. He knew that name. Kirsten crossed her arms. If you can open this box and wield what's inside, the sword will be yours. But know this, one mistake could cost you your life. Do you still dare? Theo met her gaze steadily. If it's a fine sword, he said, voice firm, then it will be mine. Theo remembered the moon-white sword from his past life. It belonged to a man known only as the Black Dragon. Almost no one knew its true nature, and those who did were either dead or missing. Theo himself had once seen the real moon-white in person. And back then, the Black Dragon had spared him. That image, that blade, was burned into his memory forever. Now here it was, right before him. The box's locking mechanism looked eerily familiar, almost identical to the key he used to access the dungeon earlier. Without hesitation, Theo pulled the key from his pouch and pressed it into place. A bright flash of blue erupted, and in an instant, the world swallowed him whole. Theo found himself standing in a storm of memories, vivid, raw, alive. Every feeling from his past life came surging back like a flood. Then came the roar. A massive shadow swept overhead, a monstrous bird, talons gleaming and eyes glowing with malevolent fire. Before Theo could react, it dove straight at him, trying to tear into his mind, to stir up his despair. But Theo didn't flinch. He grabbed the creature's enormous beak mid-lunge, his hand glowing with fierce light. You think I haven't already beaten despair? He growled. I overcame it long ago. The bird shrieked, thrashing violently, but Theo's grip only tightened. The creature's taunts turned desperate, and then, with a single motion, Theo raised his arm and unleashed his power. The monster's form shattered into motes of light. In the real world, Theo collapsed. Cecilia rushed forward, panic clear in her voice. What happened? She cried. Kirsten's expression tightened as she examined Theo's body. Strange energy patterns were running through his veins, an aura that wasn't entirely human. He'll be fine, she murmured, though her brow furrowed. It seems he's already fused with the sacred object. Moments later, Theo's hand twitched. His chest flared with brilliant blue light, then, with a gasp, he opened his eyes. A panel appeared before him, glowing softly. Owner of the moon-white sword is Theo Ragnar. Theo let out a shaky breath. So it was weakened when I faced it, he thought. That explains how I survived. His body buzzed with new power, mana flowing like a river. His level had risen to that of a high-level intermediate mage. Yet, he knew he couldn't use it fully until his awakening ceremony was complete. Kirsten crossed her arms, a rare smile flickering on her face. You scared me half to death, boy. But a promise is a promise. The moon-white sword is yours. The blade itself seemed restless, trembling slightly in Theo's hand, as if it recognized its true master. Kirsten tilted her head. Seems the sword's eager to stretch after all these centuries. Try it, cut that wall. Theo raised a brow. You're sure about this? It's a wall, Kirsten said dryly. What's the worst that could happen? Theo nodded, focusing all his energy, both his own and the new mana surging through him. Then he struck. The impact split the air with a deafening crack. When the dust cleared, half of Kirsten's workshop was cleanly sliced in two. Kirsten froze, jaw dropping. Well, that's new. Theo, panting, blinked at the destruction. That used all my mana. Kirsten rushed over, pressing her hand against his abdomen. Incredible, she muttered. You've not even learned to channel mana yet, and you're already this strong. Then her eyes gleamed with a completely different kind of light, the kind that smelled faintly of profit. This boy could be the perfect advertisement. Smiling to herself, she nodded. You're my grandson. I'll support you, and perhaps display my weapons through you. Theo just sighed. So that's her plan. Before leaving, Theo handed Kirsten the valuable materials he'd collected from the Drake. Use these to rebuild your workshop, he said sincerely. Kirsten took them with a nod. You really are something, boy. Just as she turned to walk back inside, a deep voice echoed from above, a vulture perched in a nearby tree. Kirsten. Her eyes widened in shock. You. 5 days passed. It was the day of the awakening ceremony. Theo sparred with Evelyn that morning, blades clashing, movements sharp and graceful. Evelyn grinned, sweat glistening across her brow. You've improved again, she said. 6 months ago, you were chasing my shadow. Now you're right beside it. Theo smirked faintly. I learned fast. She sheathed her sword and placed a hand on his shoulder. Today's your day. You'll awaken your mana, and when you do, you'll be unstoppable. Later, at the central headquarters, the grand ceremony began. For the Ragnar family, the awakening ceremony was everything, a sacred tradition and a brutal test of potential. Dozens of candidates lined up in pristine uniforms, each one radiating nervous energy. Watching from the high balcony was none other than Hilda Ragnar, the former family head, elegant, youthful despite her 150 years, and terrifyingly perceptive. Drums thundered. Vanna Ragnar, the ceremony referee, stepped forward and raised her voice. The awakening ceremony begins! Phase 1. Each candidate must choose a sword, channel their mana, and strike the snow-white ingot wall, a steel so tough that normal blades couldn't scratch it. To awaken their mana, each was given a pill, soma. It granted access to their mana hall, but only briefly. Their score depended on the depth of the mark they left on the steel. The deeper the mark, the greater the strength. Theo Ragnar, Vanna called. Step forward. All eyes turned to him. Theo walked calmly to the stage. Last time, he remembered, Axion scored the highest. Not this time. From the balcony, Hilda glanced at Kyle Ragnar. Is that the boy you spoke of? Kyle smiled proudly. Yes, that's him. The one who'll capture even your attention. Theo took the soma pill. The instant it touched his tongue, a surge of blue energy exploded around him, raw, wild, and powerful. Gasps echoed. The referee's eyes widened in alarm. He's overloading already? But Theo didn't falter. He steadied his breath, and slowly, like taming a storm, drew the energy back under control. Moments later, silence. Perfect balance. The referee exhaled in disbelief. He did it! Theo smiled faintly. Not like last time. He raised his sword, pouring every drop of mana into it. The air roared, and a dragon's spirit flared to life behind him, immense and radiant. The entire arena trembled as Theo struck. When the dust settled, a massive, deep mark was carved into the snow-white ingot wall. The referee's voice shook as he announced. Theo Ragnar, passed with the highest score recorded since Thorkel himself. The hall erupted. Theo's luck stat, once negative, had finally returned to normal. His name was now etched across the martial world. Even Hilda Ragnar leaned forward, intrigued. One by one, other candidates stepped up, Ray, Hulkus, Remington, all performing well, but none came close to Theo's mark. Then came the final name. Axion Ragnar. The crowd murmured. Some doubted he could match Theo. Others whispered that rivalry would soon ignite. Axion's jaw tightened. He swallowed the soma pill, red energy bursting around him like fire. A crimson dragon aura coiled behind him as he unleashed his strike. When it hit, the wall cracked, nearly as deep as Theo's. Gasps followed. Hours later, when all was done, the referee declared the results. The top rank for Phase 1. He paused, letting the tension stretch. Goes to Theo Ragnar. The judge's voice echoed across the training grounds, sharp and clear. Theo Ragnar, perfect score. 10 out of 10. Not a single mistake. A murmur rippled through the spectators. The judge wasn't done. The depth of his strike, he continued, was almost comparable to that of Lord Thorkel Ragnar himself. At that, the crowd grew restless. To be compared to Lord Thorkel, one of the 5 prodigies most likely to inherit the position of the next Ragnar Patriarch, was no small praise. Then came the second announcement. In second place, Axion Ragnar. Perfect score, 10 out of 10 as well. But the silence that followed was heavy. However, the judge added, Axion's strike fell just short of Theo's. Hence, he takes second place. A wave of disbelief swept through the arena. Theo had bested Axion Ragnar, barely, but undeniably. When the rest of the rankings were announced, few even listened. Everyone's attention was already fixed on the young man who'd just shaken the hierarchy of the clan. The judge concluded. Prepare yourselves for the second round test. The first round is officially over. That night, laughter and music spilled out from a crowded tavern. The scent of roasted meat and ale filled the air as Theo raised a cup, surrounded by comrades and well-wishers. To victory! Someone cheered. Theo smiled humbly. I'm just grateful you all came. We fought hard, and this is only the beginning. Among the crowd, Remington slipped in quietly. He looked a bit embarrassed, still stinging from his earlier performance. But before he could apologize, Theo clapped a hand on his shoulder. Don't beat yourself up over it, Theo said with a grin. You did great. Next round you'll crush it. Remington chuckled, some of the tension easing from his face. They exchanged a nod of mutual respect, a silent promise to do better in the trials ahead. Days later, far from the noise of the tavern, Theo stood on a lonely ridge overlooking the horizon. The mountains loomed ahead, jagged and cold under the gray sky. He felt the weight of his victory. Defeating Axion was no small feat, but he also knew this was just the first step. He remembered Rendon, the man he'd personally slain. Yet even as the memory flickered in his mind, Theo dismissed it. Rendon was a clown, he thought. The true enemies were still out there, Axion and Ed Troyvan. And he would have his revenge. With that resolve burning in his chest, he checked the nest compass in his hand. its faint glow pointing toward the mountain range ahead. Whatever secrets lay hidden there, he intended to uncover them. Then movement. A faint disturbance in the air behind him. Theo vanished in an instant, reappearing behind the stalker with his blade poised. "Who are you?" he demanded. The stranger raised his hands calmly. "Easy there. I'm not your enemy. Name's Gatsby, from the Galesward unit. My captain's taken quite an interest in you." Theo frowned. "Interest? What kind of interest?" Gatsby smirked. "He wants to offer you a chance, a test for recruitment." Theo's brow furrowed. "A test? If your captain wants me, why not just recruit me outright?" Before Gatsby could answer, another voice cut through the air. "There's no need for tests." A woman emerged from the shadows, poised, confident, clad in dark armor that gleamed faintly under the moonlight. "I am Ian," she said, "deputy leader of the Black Iron Knights. We'll take you immediately, no trials required." Theo blinked in surprise. Then, almost as if on cue, more figures appeared, each bearing the crest of a different faction. Offers came from every direction, voices overlapping in a swirl of persuasion and rivalry. And then silence. A new presence entered, one that made even the others step back. From the darkness, a tall figure in a dark cloak revealed herself. "Osa Ragnar," she said, her voice both commanding and composed. "I've come personally to recruit you, Theo Ragnar." Theo froze. Even among the Ragnars, Osa's name carried weight. The air around them thickened. For the first time, Theo truly grasped how much his victory had altered the balance of power. Elsewhere, in the grand plaza of the capital, chaos reigned. Bodies littered the ground, men and women who had once called themselves loyal followers. And at the center of it all stood Axion Ragnar, sword dripping crimson, his expression twisted with madness. His mind was consumed by a single name, Theo Ragnar. He had lost control, slaughtering even those who tried to calm him. Then a gust of wind stirred the blood-stained dust as another figure appeared. Calm, unshaken. Ed Troy Van. Axion roared and lunged forward, his blade cutting through the air with blind fury, but Ed caught it effortlessly, stopping it with one hand. "Fool," Ed said coldly. "You think rage will change anything? You're only wasting your strength." Axion's breathing was ragged, his eyes wild. "Then what do you suggest?" Ed stepped closer, his gaze sharp as a blade. "I'll show you how to turn the second-round test into Theo Ragnar's grave." The scene shifts to the conversation between Osa Ragnar and Theo Ragnar. Everything fell silent the moment Osa Ragnar appeared. Her sudden arrival stunned everyone. Her presence alone was like a rift in the air, her aura bending reality itself. Without a word, she raised her hand, and in an instant, a dimensional veil unfolded around Theo. A flicker of light, and just like that, the world melted away. Now, in this isolated space between realms, Osa Ragnar and Theo Ragnar stood face to face. Theo blinked in disbelief. She actually used a dimensional skill, on me? Osa's expression was calm, almost stern, as she said, "I did this to give you a direct lesson, Theo. You've shown potential, but potential alone doesn't forge a Ragnar." With a faint smile, she unsheathed her sword. The air trembled. "You've seen Khal Ragnar's style, my husband's technique. But mine is different." Then, before Theo could even react, Osa moved. Her sword blurred, countless strikes in a single breath, so fast that the space around her shimmered like falling petals. "This form," she declared as silver streaks rained down, "is called Celestial Flower Rain." Theo's eyes widened, unable to breathe for a moment. What he witnessed was beyond comprehension, an art so graceful and deadly it felt divine. When it ended, Osa turned, sheathing her blade with the same quiet control. Theo bowed deeply. "Thank you, Lady Osa Ragnar, for showing me this miracle." When she finally guided Theo back to the entrance, she said, "If you wish to learn more, you can come find me directly. I hope that one day, you will stand as a great figure in our Ragnar clan." Theo, heart pounding, could only nod in gratitude. To be taught by Osa Ragnar herself, almost impossible to refuse. A thought took root, could I become her disciple too, while still studying under Julius? Days passed. The sky over the Winter Mountain region hung gray and cold, the wind howling across the frozen peaks near the northern Great Wall, the ancient barrier guarding humanity from the Sea of Malice beyond. It was here that the Ragnar clan had, for thousands of years, defended the world from demonic incursions. And now, this sacred ground would host round 2 of the awakening ceremony. At the center stood Jackie Ragnar, the judge of this round. His voice boomed across the field. "This region," he announced, "is where future protectors of humanity shall prove their worth. But today, none shall cross into the Sea of Malice. Your battlefield lies here, in the icy mountains." He raised a hand, conjuring a map of flickering lights. Your task, within 1 week, slay demons lurking in this region and collect the red bells they carry. There are 7 bell colors, each representing the strength of the demon defeated. The rarest is the violet bell, but don't fool yourselves. No candidate has ever obtained it. The crowd murmured. Jackie continued. You may use any means necessary to gather bells before the deadline. That one sentence caught Theo's attention like a dagger to the ribs. Any means necessary, so stealing from others is allowed. Jackie added. Safe zones have been marked by totems. Stay within them, and demons cannot breach your defenses. With that, round 2 began. From every faction, candidates scattered into the mountains, some alone, some in groups. Meanwhile, Axie and Ragnar stood calmly atop a ridge, arms crossed, cold eyes locked on the distant snowfields. This round, he muttered, is where I'll finally eliminate Theo Ragnar. Elsewhere, Theo trudged through the frost when he heard a voice behind him. Hey, Theo! It was Remington, sword resting on his shoulder, his breath misting in the cold. Even though we're friends, he said, I've been thinking, you're more than that. You're my rival. Theo blinked, then smiled softly. I understand. I feel the same way. Let's push each other forward. Remington laughed, the sound echoing against the cliffs. Then don't you dare lose, because I'm gonna beat you in this round. Theo nodded. I'll look forward to that. As Remington marched away, Theo felt a surprising warmth in his chest. To think someone like him sees me as a rival. It rekindled his spirit, sharpening his focus. He checked his compass. The nest should be near. After a long trek, the compass stopped pointing forward. Theo scanned the terrain, nothing unusual. Strange, is it below? Then a rustle. Instinct screamed. He drew his moon-white sword in a flash and slashed forward. The earth erupted, forming a wide crater. Come out, he said coldly. I know you're there. 3 shadows stepped out from behind the rocks, hard eyes, scarred faces. Theo recognized them at once. Those bastards, the 3 murderers from my past life. He remembered, over 761 victims, heads destroyed. Monsters in human skin. Theo narrowed his gaze. Did Axion hire you? The leader smirked. No. Then was it Wolfgang? That question made them stiffen, a flicker of fear. How do you know that name? Their hesitation confirmed it. One of them hissed. Theo isn't normal. Maybe we should. Shut up, the leader snapped. We kill him here. Theo exhaled slowly, mana flooding his blade. In the next instant, 3 arcs of light flashed. The strikes hit with absolute precision. When the dust settled, only 3 headless bodies remained. Theo lowered his sword, calm but resolute. This move, the echo of Osa Ragnar's celestial flower rain. I'm nowhere near her level. She struck 120 targets in one breath, but I'm getting closer. He tossed their corpses into a ravine. But then, a faint blue light glimmered below. And nearby, a stairway carved into ice. Theo's instincts urged him forward. Meanwhile, elsewhere in the mountains. Current standings, shouted a runner to Julius. Axion Ragnar, 41 bells, first place. Ray Ragnar, second. Theo Ragnar, none collected, whereabouts unknown. Wolfgang chuckled darkly. Impressive in round 1, but perhaps dead already. He smirked, unaware that his own schemes were being overheard. Through telepathy, Ed Troiven's voice echoed in Wolfgang's mind. Are you the one behind this? Wolfgang answered coolly. Yes. Don't worry. That reply infuriated Ed. You acted without consulting me? He recalled how, after being expelled from Camellia Palace, he'd searched the Rose Palace for the Primal Dragon's sacred artifact, and found nothing. He needed Theo alive long enough to reveal its secret. Back at headquarters, Osa Ragnar turned to Julius. It seems Wolfgang and Ed Troiven are scheming. Shall we intervene? Julius shook his head. No. Theo won't fall so easily. Let this test play out. But next time, Osa, warn me before you meet him. Back to Theo. He entered a vast corridor deep in the mountain, shadows moving along the walls. Ghouls lurked but kept their distance, sensing the power flowing from him. Step by step, he descended until he reached an enormous cavern glittering with treasure. Then he froze. Before him lay a colossal dragon, its scales like glaciers, breathing slow and deep. No way, this is the nest of the ancient Dragon King. Theo's heart hammered. If it wakes, I'm dead. But before he could retreat, the dragon's eye opened. A golden iris the size of a shield locked onto him. A deep voice rolled through the cavern like thunder. It has been a long time since someone came here. Theo fell to one knee. Are you Lodbrok? The ancient Dragon King of the North? The dragon's eyes softened. You know that name. Theo bowed his head. You are the protector of this icy domain, and the one who once formed the pact was Sigurd Ragnar, founder of our clan. Lodbrok chuckled faintly. Sigurd, yes. Ours was a spiritual bond, not love. And no, dragons and humans cannot bear children. Theo hesitated. Then, the legend that the Ragnar clan carries Dragon King blood? It is partly true, Lodbrok said. Through the spirit pact, I shared a fragment of my essence, my blood, with Sigurd. Theo's mind reeled. Before he could ask further, Lodbrok's voice grew firm. The chosen one of this age stands before me. You may ask 3 questions. Theo took a breath. This was his chance. First, he asked, why are you here? Lodbrok's tone turned somber. Because beyond the sea of malice slumbers a nameless demon, one powerful enough to destroy all creation. I remain to guard against it. Theo's spine chilled. In Lodbrok's eye, he saw something he never expected, fear. If even a Dragon King fears that demon, he thought, then what in the world could it be? His second question came carefully. What is the sacred artifact of the primal dragon? Lodbrok tilted her massive head. Why do you ask as though you don't know? You already carry 3 of them. Theo's eyes widened. 3? The first is the Camellia Dungeon, the second, the Moon-White Sword, but what is the third? Lodbrok continued. These artifacts are fragments of Fafnir, the primal dragon who divided his soul into 31 pieces to protect humanity. They can take any form, weapon, place, or even experience. Each one holds a guardian dragon. Theo realized something grim. In my past life, these artifacts were unguarded. Why? He steadied himself for the final question. Why was I chosen? Lodbrok's eyes gleamed. Why do you assume you alone were chosen? Theo's heart stopped. You mean, there are others? Names flashed in his mind, Kirsten. Ed Troyvan. They might be chosen too. They might even share my knowledge of the past. The truth hit him like ice. This world, it's deeper than I thought. The questioning is complete, Lodbrok declared. Now your reward. Theo glanced at the treasures, gold, gems, the Amon grimoire gleaming at the center. But instead of reaching for it, he looked at Lodbrok herself. My choice, he said quietly, is you. Lodbrok blinked. Then burst into laughter. Surely you jest. What do you really want? I wasn't joking. Her laughter stopped. A thunderous roar followed. Lodbrok's power filled the cavern as she unleashed dragon fear. Theo staggered, gasping for air, but refused to bow. He summoned his own lesser drake fear, weaker, but burning with willpower. Why break your promise now? He shouted. You said I could choose anything. Lodbrok hesitated. Something in his eyes reminded her of Sigurd, that same reckless, unyielding light. Finally, the Dragon King sighed. So be it. Her form shimmered, scales fading, body reshaping, until before Theo stood a woman of ethereal beauty, hair like silver flame. But on her chest was a gaping hole, a wound that pulsed faintly with light. I lost my heart 50 years ago, she said quietly. I have 3 years left to live. I cannot leave this place. Even now, I am fading. Theo clenched his fists. Even so, I still choose you. I will find a way to restore your heart, no matter what it takes. Lodbrok smiled, the first true smile she'd given in centuries. Then I will accept you, Theo Ragnar. She handed him a grimoire, the very one he'd sought, the Amon grimoire. Within this book lies the path to open the mind gate, the key to bonding our souls. You have 1 month. Until then, you must remain here. Theo frowned. But round 2 ends in 15 days. May I return after? No, she said firmly. You must finish before the ceremony ends. Theo nodded grimly. Then I'll do it in 13 days. Meanwhile, 3 days before the ceremony began, at Ed Troyvan's headquarters, a different conversation unfolded. The totem safe zones rely on black beads, one advisor said. Inside each bead is a sealed demon. If shattered, it summons the demon instantly. Ed smirked. Exactly. That's the bait. Candidates will hunt demons for bells, and Theo will have no choice but to walk straight into our trap. Axion crossed his arms. Then shall I capture him and force the truth from him? Ed shook his head. Your power and his are nearly equal. Don't be foolish. Instead, capture his supporters. Make them talk. Time passed. Only 12 hours remained in round 2. Still no sign of Theo Ragnar, said a reporter. Felix Ragnar from Plum Palace scoffed. Probably dead already, killed by those 3 scoundrels. Axion glared at him. Watch your mouth. That's why Lady Osa prefers Theo to you. Felix's face twisted with rage, but he held his tongue. Axion turned to his allies. Enough talk. We'll strike Theo's supporters, and end this game our way. And so, under cover of storm and snow, Axion and the Scaled Dragon Society began their bloody hunt. Deep in the nest, Lodbrok watched proudly as Theo finished his training. To open the Mind Gate in less than half a month, remarkable, she said. Theo felt the change within him. His mana hall pulsed with new life, and something ancient stirred in his chest, the faint echo of a dragon's heart. He'd also gained a new ability, the power to read the thoughts and memories of any object he touched. Develop it well, Lodbrok said. One day, you will hear my voice through it, and wield my power as Sigurd once did. But do not forget, find a way to heal me. I have only 3 years. Theo knelt. I swear it. With a wave of her hand, Lodbrok cast a spell. Light engulfed him, carrying him back to the mountain's entrance. When the light faded, Theo stood once again beneath the gray sky. Only 12 hours left, he murmured. I've done so much, yet collected no bells. He tightened his grip on his sword. Then I'll do it the fastest way. I'll steal them. If he could defeat Axion Ragnar, he'd jump straight to first place. But that was easier said than done. As he turned to plan his move, a voice, quiet but close, spoke behind him. Theo froze. Someone had followed him. He turned sharply, eyes wide. And there, standing in the snow, was an unexpected figure. The person who appeared was Ray Ragnar, pale, unsteady, and frighteningly weak. For a moment, Theo assumed a demon had attacked her. But the moment his eyes landed on the clean, precise sword wound, he understood instantly. A human did this. He tried to ask what had happened, pushing for answers, but Ray's strength finally gave out. Overwhelmed by blood loss, she collapsed. Theo caught her before she fell and immediately placed his hand on Ray's sword, activating the new skill he had acquired to trace the events that had unfolded. The vision shifted. Ray Ragnar was hiding in the shadows, silently watching Axion's movements. Axion was torturing and capturing many of Theo's supporters with chilling ease. He scolded his subordinate, irritation in his voice. Why did you bring so many? 2 or 3 were enough. Any more than that is troublesome. One subordinate lifted his blade, ready to quietly kill a few captives to reduce the burden. That was the moment Ray stepped in, unable to bear the cruelty any longer. She appeared from her hiding place, determined to stop this before it went any further. Axion's eyes hardened. Leave, Ray. I don't want any unnecessary trouble. But Ray couldn't turn away from what she was witnessing. She couldn't allow Axion to act like this. She lunged at him, sword flashing. Their blades clashed. And in an instant, Axion's overwhelming strength slashed through her defenses, injuring her on the spot. The vision ended. Theo's fury ignited like fire. He demanded to know why Axion had committed something so vile. Ray, forcing herself to speak through the pain, explained the truth. Axion had planned to capture Theo from the very beginning of the program. But since Theo never appeared, Axion turned his cruelty toward Theo's supporters instead. Theo's anger deepened, realizing that even in this new life, Axion and Ed Troyven still sought to torment him in every possible way. He asked Ray for Axion's location. Elsewhere, almost at the same time, one of Axion's subordinates rushed in with urgent news. Lord Axion, Theo Ragnar has appeared. Axion's expression lit up with satisfaction. Good. Then it's time I show everyone that I am stronger than Theo Ragnar. However, at that exact moment, Ed Troyven stepped in, his cold voice cutting through Axion's excitement. He reminded Axion not to forget their true objective, to extract the location of the sacred artifact from the captives. There was no need for Axion to confront Theo directly. Ed declared that he himself would handle Theo. He then ordered Axion to use a black crystal to divert the attention of the program's internal observer station nearby. Axion didn't like the order, but he obeyed, reluctantly and with clear displeasure. Back with Theo and Ray, Ray desperately tried to stop him from going. It's a trap, she insisted. Ed Troyven already sent assassins to kill you. If you go alone, you won't survive. Let me find reinforcements first. Theo understood her reasoning, but the urgency pressing on him was stronger. There was no time left, and he still needed Axion's location. Ray grew frustrated, her voice trembling between anger and fear. Theo, this is foolish. You'll die. What's the point if you die for nothing? Theo's reply was quiet, but heavy with determination. I can't lose my people again. Ray shouted back, her emotions boiling over. This is Ragnar territory. Sacrifice is unavoidable. Theo threw her own actions back at her. And yet you, Ray, chose to fight, and that's why you're injured like this. Ray froze. In that brief moment, she saw flashes, glimpses of Theo's past life. The destruction. The betrayal. The pain he had endured. And for the first time, she began to understand the weight he carried. Theo's voice hardened. I'm tired of losing everything I love. I won't repeat those mistakes ever again. His eyes locked on Ray's. Now, tell me where Axion is. Meanwhile, back at the site where Theo's supporters had been ambushed, Remington noticed something terribly wrong. Scattered across the ground were backpacks, supplies, and food, all drenched in blood. He felt his stomach drop. Without hesitation, he called out to the two closest allies nearby, Hulkus and Erica, urging them to help investigate immediately. On the road leading toward Axion's location, Theo encountered several demons. But to him, they were nothing more than obstacles to brush aside. He cut through each demon effortlessly, barely slowing down. As he moved, he pieced things together in his mind. The captives were probably still alive. This entire setup looked too much like a trap crafted by Ed Troyvan, with one single target in mind. Theo himself. Even so, Theo pressed onward. He knew Axion too well, unpredictable, temperamental, often impulsive. If Theo arrived too late, Axion might do something unforgivable to the hostages. Back with Ray, her thoughts churned with memories. No matter how many years had passed, no matter how many lifetimes, Theo was still the same person who risked himself to help others. Realizing this, Ray clenched her fists. She had to find a way to help him. She would. At Axion's encampment, the captured supporters were still resisting with everything they had. Their struggling irritated Axion deeply, so much so that he almost acted on impulse, raising his blade to kill a few of them just to quiet the scene. But he stopped himself, remembering the strict orders from above. For now, they would simply wait. Axion's expression twisted with frustration. Ed Troyvan had even sent 4 elite sword masters to deal with Theo. That fact lingered in Axion's mind, leaving a bitter aftertaste, as if Ed didn't trust him to handle Theo alone. As these thoughts gnawed at him, something made the entire camp freeze. Theo had arrived. He stood at the entrance of the clearing, his entire body splattered with demon blood, eyes cold and burning with fury. The moment he saw the bruised, weakened captives, his own people, something inside him ignited. Axion instantly prepared to finish Theo off. He wanted nothing more than to kill him right there. But once again, the orders from above bound him like invisible chains. So instead, he sneered. If you want to save your friends, then tell me where the sacred artifact is. Before he could finish, Theo cut sharply into his words. Axion, are you afraid? His voice carried a deadly calm. Are you scared you'll lose to me? The provocation struck Axion like a hammer blow. His composure cracked. His pupils tightened. His breath hitched. Theo's words had found their mark. Theo didn't stop there. He stepped closer, voice sharpening like a blade. If you're not afraid, then why stoop to such pathetic tactics? Why hide behind schemes and attack from the shadows instead of facing me directly? Doesn't that prove you're scared of me? Axion's rage trembled visibly beneath his skin. His jaw clenched, his fingers twitched on his sword hilt. But Theo didn't give him time to recover. If you truly aren't afraid, then fight me, right here, right now. One-on-one. If you still have even a shred of pride left, accept it. Axion let out a low, icy laugh, trying to mask the fury boiling inside him. He had been warned repeatedly by his superiors not to let Theo provoke him, but it was already too late. Theo's words hit exactly where it hurt most. Axion's temper snapped. He decided then and there to accept the duel, even if it meant openly defying orders. The elite warriors Ed Troyvan had dispatched could only watch from the sidelines. They had no choice now but to wait and see which of the two would walk away alive. In an instant, Theo moved. His body blurred as he lunged forward at high speed, striking first. Axion met the blow head-on, their swords clashing violently, and the true battle began. Theo kept up relentless pressure, each swing of his blade carving sparks and shockwaves through the air. Mana erupted around them like storm winds. Axion ground his teeth and unleashed one of his strongest techniques, Roar of the Dragon King, a devastating skill infused with a massive surge of mana. But Theo countered immediately. He released his own technique, a triple strike infused with mana, 3 blows unleashed in perfect unison. The combined force shattered Axion's attack midair, sending the shockwave back toward him. The impact left Axion stunned. He hadn't expected Theo's strength to have grown so explosively. From the sidelines, Orion, a senior member of the Scaled Dragon Society, stood frozen. Theo's power shook him to his core. If Axion loses here, Orion thought. Should I switch sides? Should I follow Theo instead? A tempting thought, but then reality grounded him. Ed Troyvan's elite men were still nearby, watching. No matter how strong Theo looked, the situation was stacked against him. Orion quickly signaled his group. Retreat. Now. He had no intention of getting dragged into a conflict this explosive, especially one that could shift the entire balance of the clan. Flashing back to the past. When Axion was still a child, Ed Troyvan had been the one whispering ambitions into his ear, pushing him toward greatness. Axion trained with brutal intensity, driven by the belief that one day he would become the patriarch of the Ragnar family, not for himself, but to bring honor to the Troyvan name. Because although Axion bore the Ragnar surname, his true blood ran Troyvan. Back to the present. Axion gave Theo a grudging acknowledgement. "You've grown stronger, Theo. I'll give you that." And then, without warning, he lunged, restarting the duel with vicious, renewed aggression. Their swords clashed again and again, lighting up the battlefield with sparks and exploding bursts of mana. Both men were fighting with everything they had. Inside, Theo stayed cold and focused. Axion's aggression didn't intimidate him. If anything, it confirmed Theo's suspicions, proving that everything he'd calculated was correct. Elsewhere, the news spread quickly. "Theo Ragnar has appeared. He's battling Axion directly." Julius smiled with relief and satisfaction. Wolfgang, on the other hand, was stunned. His hired killers had failed to eliminate Theo. Ed Troyvan clenched his teeth, fury burning in his gut. Theo was still alive, and that meant the plan had to move quickly. Once Axion forced out the location of the sacred artifact, Ed's agents would strike immediately to kill Theo. Then another report came in. "Axion and Theo are now fighting one-on-one." Ed Troyvan's expression froze. Why had Axion defied his instructions? On the battlefield, the duel only grew fiercer. Axion unleashed his sword technique with full power, slashing at Theo with everything he had. But the longer they fought, the clearer it became. Theo had improved at a terrifying speed. Axion's eyes narrowed. Theo's movements weren't quite as fast as before, and Axion seized on what he thought was an opening. He hurled his sword with a special technique, shouting, "Your moves are predictable, Theo! I can read all of them!" The blade shot through the air at unimaginable speed. But then, Theo caught the sword. Perfectly. Cleanly. As if he had seen it coming. The people standing around the battlefield went silent, barely daring to breathe. Axion's face twisted with disbelief. This wasn't luck. Theo's gaze hardened as everything clicked together in his mind. The mysterious swordsman who killed him in his past life. The one who murdered him at the Rose Palace. The one whose technique could only belong to a ruthless killer. It was Axion. It had always been Axion. Theo remembered everything, the fire, the helplessness, his own tears at the Rose Palace. Rendon's late reveal had exposed the involvement of Camellia Palace, but not the identity of the killer. Only one person used such a suicidal, weapon-throwing sword technique. Axion Troyvan. Now the truth was undeniable. Theo's voice shook with fury. "Why, Axion? Why did you try so hard to kill us?" Axion's eyes widened. Theo's certainty, his tone, it was as if Theo remembered everything. But Theo was no longer the powerless victim from his past life. He was someone who would protect himself, and everyone he cared about. Without hesitation, Theo hurled the sword back at Axion with blinding speed. Axion tried to dodge, but something was wrong. Theo's killing intent wasn't normal, it was monstrous. The mana around Theo surged, heavy and suffocating. Axion felt a shock down his spine. This isn't human. Seizing the moment, Theo dashed forward with staggering speed, striking Axion backward with a force that made the ground tremble. He didn't stop. He pressed forward relentlessly, attacking again and again without giving Axion a second to breathe. Between strikes, Theo hissed. "What's wrong, Axion? Are you afraid now?" The insult stabbed directly into Axion's pride. Enraged, Axion lunged forward, trying to grab Theo's arm and force his sword into him, attempting to end the fight right there. But Theo's reflexes were too sharp. He slipped out of Axion's grip at the last second, and the two clashed once more, their blades sparking violently as both were knocked backward. A heartbeat later, Theo disappeared from sight. Axion spun, but it was too late. Theo reappeared behind him. With a single precise strike, he knocked Axion's sword out of his hand. Theo's voice dropped into a chilling whisper. "Do you want to feel what a blade piercing through your body is like?" Then, Theo's sword flew toward Axion, impossibly fast, a fatal strike he could neither dodge nor block. Returning to Remington's investigation, he quickly came to a grim conclusion. This massacre, this level of cruelty. Only Axion could have done it. And if Axion was behind it, the intent was obvious. He aimed to eliminate Theo at any cost. Hulkus's face twisted with rage the moment he realized this. "That bastard Axion!" Hulkus growled. He hated cowardice more than anything, and this underhanded tactic, attacking Theo's supporters instead of fighting Theo openly, made his blood boil. Erica, in contrast, looked utterly unbothered. "This is normal behavior for the Ragnar clan, she said casually. Nothing surprising. Remington exhaled sharply, his expression dark. And this, he muttered, is exactly why I can't stand the Ragnar family. They have no sense of honor. Regardless of his disdain for the clan, Remington had already made up his mind. He would help rescue the abducted supporters. He believed wholeheartedly that this was the path Theo himself would choose. He turned to Hulkus and Erica. Come with me. We're getting them back. Hulkus didn't hesitate. Of course. Let's go. But Erica was a different story entirely. She crossed her arms, expression flat. No thanks. I have zero interest in saving weaklings or Theo's followers. That's not my job. Hulkus groaned, exasperated. My sister really is the worst sometimes. Remington seized the opportunity. He looked Erica straight in the eyes. I know exactly why you want to meet Theo. So here's the deal, if you help with this mission, I'll personally make sure you meet him. Erica paused. The offer clearly tempted her. After a bit of back and forth, she finally agreed. And with that, the three of them, Remington, Hulkus, and Erica, set out together. But they hadn't gone far before a new threat appeared. A group blocked their path. The Scaled Dragon Society. Remington froze for a split second. He hadn't expected to run into them of all people. One of the members sneered arrogantly, provoking Hulkus instantly. Hulkus tightened his fists. That tone. I hate it already. Remington stepped forward before things escalated further. He addressed the leader, Orion, an old acquaintance from the past. Orion, he warned calmly. Step aside. I don't want to fight an old friend. But Orion shook his head, refusing instantly. Can't do that. And just like that, Remington had no choice left. Then we fight. His team snapped into battle stance. The Scaled Dragon Society followed suit. And in the next heartbeat, the two sides collided. Remington's team versus the Scaled Dragon Society. In a sudden, fierce clash that shook the air around them. Meanwhile, in the midst of the duel between Axion and Theo, one of the captives saw their chance. While everyone's focus was on the battle, the captive grabbed the sword Theo had thrown earlier and used it to cut through the ropes binding them. At that same moment, Theo's blade was descending toward Axion, a decisive killing strike. When another figure suddenly stepped in and blocked it. The newcomer revealed himself. Liam Troyvan, a high-level sword master personally dispatched by Ed Troyvan. Liam glanced toward Axion and spoke calmly. Forgive me for interfering, but this was necessary. Immediately, he ordered the few remaining elite fighters around him to protect Axion. Then, without hesitation, Liam leapt forward and engaged Theo head-on. One of Liam's men tossed a spare sword to Axion, who caught it, though his eyes were distant, dark, spiraling in deep, disturbing thoughts. The battle resumed. Under Liam's relentless pressure, Theo found himself struggling. Liam's attacks were sharp, precise, and overwhelmingly fast. Still, Theo refused to back down. Liam, in the middle of his assault, couldn't help but admire Theo's skill. If Theo were fighting a newly ranked high-level swordsman, Liam thought, he would definitely win. But Liam wasn't newly ranked. He was far beyond the ordinary. A monster among swordsmen. He sighed internally, almost pitying Theo. A shame, he thought. A talent like this, destined to die today. But for him, it was justified. Everything he did was for the glory of the Troyvan clan. Liam's barrage intensified. Sword strikes came from every direction, overwhelming Theo and forcing him on the defensive. Theo was beginning to lose ground. Then, a blade suddenly pierced through Liam's body from behind. Liam staggered, coughing blood, eyes wide with shock. And the person who stabbed him was Axion? Theo froze. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. Axion had stabbed one of his own allies. Just because Liam had interfered in their duel. Axion glared down at Liam, voice cold as ice. I did this because you tried to stop my fight. His eyes twitched with fury. You think I'm going to lose to Theo? Theo stared in disbelief. Axion, you're insane. You'd kill your own people? Axion's mind drifted back to Ed Troyvan's words from his childhood. Weak people are useless. It had shaped his entire life. Anyone who was weak, anyone who obstructed him, deserved to die. Back in the present, Axion muttered under his breath. Theo, you're strong. But you're supposed to be weaker than me. His voice darkened. Fate already decided. I will be the next leader of the Ragnar family. There's no world where I lose to someone like you. Anyone who stands in my way, I'll kill them all. With that, Axion unleashed a devastating sword technique, sending a destructive wave crashing toward Theo. But Theo's figure vanished. Axion's eyes widened. What? From above, Theo descended like a falling star. He slashed down directly onto Axion, landing a massive blow. Though Liam was gravely injured, he still managed to shout orders to his remaining troops. Support Axion! Kill Theo Ragnar! Despite taking the hit, Axion refused to stay down. He forced himself back into the fight, desperately defending against Theo's barrage. But deep inside, panic was rising. He remembered Ed Troiven's warning. In the Ragnar clan, anything can happen. And now, it was happening. The impossible. The unthinkable. Theo was overpowering him. Axion's mind shook. No. This couldn't be real. Unwilling to accept the truth, he channeled every shred of remaining strength, every drop of mana, every ounce of hatred, and unleashed his ultimate technique with one final, desperate roar. All he wanted now was to kill Theo Ragnar. A massive wave of energy tore through the battlefield, shaking the earth. But Theo stood unshaken, his eyes icy calm. Your selfish ambitions have taken too many lives, Axion. If you cannot stop your wicked ways, then I will. He summoned every last bit of his own power, merging it with his mana, until the energy crackled violently around him. Then he unleashed it. A colossal strike shot forward, obliterating everything in its path. The ground split. The shockwave roared. Everyone watching was frozen in stunned silence. Axion screamed. But the attack was too fast, too powerful. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, Axion's body swayed. His head slid from his shoulders. He crumpled to the ground. And in an instant, Axion Ragnar ceased to exist in this world.